Welcome into our pre-draft show ahead of round 2 in 3, day 2 of the 2020 NFL Draft. I'm Sierra Goodwill here with our usual suspects, Mike Petralia and Evan Lazar. We've got Greg Bedard from Boston Sports Journal and a special guest, George Iloka, former NFL safety and host of the Gym Bag podcast now that you can find exclusively on CLNS Media. George, thanks for joining us tonight.
No, thanks for having me. A little clarification, not former, just free agent, but it's all good.
Free agent.
Sign them, Pats.
I love it. George, we're going to start with you because you weren't with us last night. What are your most surprising moments or most shocking picks that you found from round 1 of the draft last night?
Jordan Love, obviously, to Green Bay. I don't think anybody was expecting that. Even though there was chatter, you didn't think they would make a move like that for a quarterback in the first round while they still have Aaron Rodgers, while they'll still need other positions. So that was a surprise. What was also a surprise for me was the corner out of Auburn that got drafted into Miami when they have pretty much 2 of the highest paid corners, Byron Jones, now that the contract he signed, and before him, Xavier Howard, his contract was the highest one before Byron. So that kind of threw me off, a corner in the first round, but it makes sense. I mean, Brian Flores is from the Patriot tree, and you can never have too many DBs when you think about the Patriots, and he came from that family. So from that standpoint, it kind of made sense, but it was still kind of surprising to me.
And we're going to go tonight. The Patriots obviously have the 5th pick in the second round, number 37. There's been talks about maybe they'll trade down again. That would be classic Bill Belichick. We don't know when we're finally going to be able to talk about a new Patriots prospect here. But who would you guys like to see? George, we'll start with you at 37 for the Patriots to get their hands on.
A quarterback. If you ask Greg, me and him talked about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 weeks ago. I said my sleeper pick for the Patriots was Jordan Love. So although I was surprised that he got drafted in the first round, I thought he would fall to the Patriots somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd. That was my opinion at the time. The Patriots had a chance to probably, make a run at him. And obviously they traded away their first round pick. So that was kind of my quarterback for them. But I like currently, Jalen Hurts. He's with Nick Saban. And if you can play under Nick Saban, I think you can play pretty well for Belichick. So I would like for them to make a run at the quarterback position. But if not, and they choose to wait later in the draft or just skip this year when it comes to the quarterback position and maybe tank for, Lawrence over there and Klinsman, they need weapons, because the biggest thing that Tom Brady was frustrated with last year is he didn't have, the weapons that he's used to and accustomed to. So you can draft a quarterback 2nd round, 3rd round, wherever, 4th round. I mean, Brady was obviously a late round draft pick, but the problems are still the same. The same things that he faced last year that frustrated him, that's something that rookie quarterback or whatever quarterback they currently have on their roster who ends up starting is going to have to face with those challenges. So if not a quarterback, a run at some tight ends and some receivers.
Yeah, George, I wanted to actually ask you about your opinion on this safety class, because no safeties going in the first round last night, and the Patriots rumored to maybe being interested in either Xavier McKinney or Antoine Winfield. Do you have a safety in this class that you really like?
Both of those players are dynamic players, and whatever team that they go to, they're going to help and elevate that defense. But even though I'm a safety, I'm not surprised that there was no safety taken in the first round, given the fact that the safety position has been devalued over the last, really since I've been in the league. I mean, even this year in free agency, there wasn't a big run at safeties. I don't think that anybody really signed that big max contract for a safety. Now, we had 2 big safeties get a franchise tag, and Anthony Harris and Justin Simmons out of Denver. But you saw it. You saw the tide coming in terms when it comes to the safety position and how teams were feeling and gauging that out. So giving a draft like this year, teams, pass in the first round, but once one goes off the board, then you'll start seeing them. It's like a trickle-down effect. All right, it's time to make a run. So same thing with the tight end position. It's coming, and same thing with running backs. It's coming for teams to start making a run.
I'd love to see the Patriots go defense. I've thought all along that their first pick in this draft is going to be defense, and they're going to get away from some of the high-profile offensive players. And A.J. Epineza is still out there. He's an Iowa guy, obviously outstanding size. And when you take a look at the fact that they lost Jamie Collins and obviously Kyle Van Noy to the Miami Dolphins, there is a hole there to fill. And if the Kirk Ferentz tree stays true and Belichick trusts what he has heard from about AJ from Kirk Ferentz, I think he is the pick at 37 if they stay in that spot. I'd like that chance.
I'd like to see them possibly go tight end here, but the thing is when you get into this area, it might be a little bit early for the tight ends. I mean, really, it might be you're looking at third round, when the first tight end goes off the board. But I think we all know that they need help at tight end. And here's the thing, and it has to do with their thinking. How many of these guys are really, all that much better than what they have? I mean, people could think what they want about Matt Lacoste and Ryan Izzo, but I mean, if you stack up Cole Kmet and Matt Lacoste on where they tested and sort of their size, it's very similar. And Lacoste was hurt all last year. The Patriots always look at players in terms of, are they better than what they have? And is Kmet that guy? I don't know. I think that Troutman has a chance, but he might not be a guy till third round. My guy who I'd like to see them reach a little bit, and they do reach a little bit in the second round, think outside the box. And I would go with Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame, who was a wide receiver for them. But I think in not too long, I think he could be a tight end for them. He catches those type of balls. He's really good as far as his catch radius and things like that. He's a 4.5 guy, so he would be an upgrade in speed. And I would like to see them, sort of risk a little bit to get a little bit better. Instead of going with the solid doubles, go for a guy like that who might be, a bigger upgrade for them.
Before I get to some questions from our viewers, feel free to drop them live in the comments as we go along. All your Patriots draft-centric questions. But George, while we have you, as an outsider perspective, I know we're all covering the Patriots on a daily basis. A big offseason, Tom Brady's gone. Rob Gronkowski came back to football, but not to play for the Patriots. Do you think this is an indication of these players getting tired of the wear and tear of playing under Bill Belichick in the quote-unquote Patriot way?
I wouldn't say it's more so because of Belichick or the Patriots, where they're just older. I mean, obviously, a high chance of winning is going to be with the New England Patriots. Even on a down year like last year, they were still 12-4. You see what I'm saying? So in terms of your percentages of getting to the Super Bowl, that's a pretty good team to be at versus a Tampa Bay just in general. Now, when you think about Gronk, he's been banged up. The last year he played was 2018. Numbers weren't horrible, but obviously that was the year where people were making fun of him in terms of like how he looked the shell of himself. I mean, the play that stood out to me was when he was back there on defense against the Miami Dolphins, him trying to chase down Kenyon Drake, and he didn't look like himself anymore. So you can tell from a physical standpoint that he was beat up. And so if I'm an older guy like Gronk, it is hard to continue to hold that standard and the demands that they put on your body in New England. So if I was going to unretire like a guy like Gronk, why not Tampa? It doesn't mean the expectations will be different. They're still probably going for the Super Bowl. But let's face it, every team is different from how they treat you, how they take care of you, and all these other things. But the expectations are the same. So I don't think they're necessarily tired of Belichick, not necessarily tired of the Patriots way, but they are older. And Belichick is a guy from, outside looking in, from what I hear from guys that I've played with that's been around there, that he doesn't really, bend the rules for really anybody. It's the Patriot way. And, you get in where you fit in or you get out. And I just think it made sense. And then obviously with Brady going there, one of his close friends, it just made perfect sense.
Made sense for the two of them, that's for sure. Let's get to some questions. How likely is it for Joe Tunney to get dealt tonight? We've talked a lot about this. The Patriots put the franchise tag on him, but to include him in a trade could free up some significant cap space. Evan, we can start with you here. Do you think Tunney is dealt tonight?
Well, I might have thought that if they had picked at 23, but now they have 5 picks on day 2. Maybe Greg has some information that I don't have on this one, but it just feels to me like they have enough ammo on day 2 and they've kind of positioned themselves. If they were thinking of just trading Tunney, then they could probably have just kind of stayed put at 23 and made a selection last night. But they like the trade that they got with the Chargers, maybe a little too much to do that. I'm not sure, but it just seems like they're pretty set with draft capital at this point. So it might just be a salary cap situation. But if it's just for a pick, just to get another pick in the second or third round, I think they're pretty set at that spot.
Yeah, from what I know about the situation, I think heading into the draft, the Patriots would have been open to dealing Joe Tunney, and ideally, they would have gotten something, in the second or third round that would have represented more than what they would get with a compensatory pick should he leave in free agency after this year. So that's what they were looking for. They didn't find any takers, and it's not that the Patriots weren't interested; they are. But the problem is on the other side. Teams have a tough time giving up, say, a second-round pick, and then all of a sudden forking over $50 million guaranteed in a big contract. They would have done it. Teams like the Dolphins and the Jets would have done it right in regular free agency because you're not giving up a draft pick for especially two teams like that who are, rebuilding. They need those picks. Those are premium picks to them. To give up a premium pick and fork over that money, and plus with the pandemic situation, teams are now forecasting a flatter cap down the road. So you combine all those forces, and a lot of teams just aren't interested in doing that deal at that point. And right now, I would have to say that Tunney does not get dealt right now. Then, look, it's $15 million on their cap. That's a lot. They're going to need to sign their draft picks. They might do some other things in free agency. I think ideally they would hold on to Tunney and maybe trade him closer to the season, a la Logan Mankins, that type of thing. But I think for right now, they're going to hang on to him and then see what happens.
And we got another question asking, Fromm or Hurts in the third? This could be the night that the Patriots draft a quarterback. A lot of people have Jalen Hurts, Jake Fromm, Eason, all going in maybe the second, third round. Do you think that the Patriots get involved?
I like Jalen Hurts over Jake Fromm. I said that last night, guys, and I like he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's still 6'2", and he's got the mobility, and I think he could bring a different look to what the Patriots are doing. And I think everything's on the table, right? Without Tom Brady there, I think the fun part of this, if you're in the Patriots front office and you're Belichick, is you've got some weapons on the roster still, not a lot, but some weapons still, and you can go in a lot of different directions. And that's what I'm kind of fascinated to see what they do here tonight in the second and third round. Do they make some picks that kind of signal the direction they're headed offensively, and would Jalen Hurts be part of that?
From what I've heard, and it could change, and it could be a value thing where they see, all right, if Jalen Hurts is there in the fourth round, okay, all of a sudden he's good value to them. I don't think the Patriots I don't think they're in love with either of those players. I think that Hurts is a guy, there are snaps where you're like, holy cow, he looks exactly like Russell Wilson. But then there are a lot of other snaps where he's not even close to the accuracy or the playmaking ability under duress that Russell Wilson can do. As far as Fromm, I think there's a lot of things that the Patriots like about Jake Fromm, where he probably gets knocked down their draft board and maybe his value is lower and he might go higher to some other teams, is things like hand size and arm length for playing in the wintertime. I mean, he had among the smallest hands, not just for quarterbacks, any position at the combine. And when you're talking about trying to win games in January at Gillette, that becomes an issue. Ball security becomes an issue, and it's a very real thing as far as their evaluation with quarterbacks. So I don't think those guys are high on their draft board. I think when you're talking about like a Luton from Oregon State, maybe a Jacob Eason, maybe a James Morgan from FIU, you're talking about guys who are 6'5", 6'6", big guys who can throw the ball with long arms, big hands. I think those are more in their realm in this draft.
I hear all these things that you guys say, and I just wonder, outside looking in, because I still know what went on last year. Is this a retool kind of year or a rebuild kind of year for the Patriots? Because it sounds like from what you guys are saying, they're not really sold. They're not really excited about the guys that's left out there. It's just like, if they fall to us, okay. But I still see the roster, and I still see that Julian Edelman, who's going to go down probably in the Hall of Fame, was their leading receiver last year. And the next up is a running back in James White. So I see these things, and I'm saying, what's changing? You didn't do anything really in free agency. Now they signed Marquise Lee. That's going to help them out a lot. But I just see a lot of the same kind of receivers right now on their roster. I see the same backs, and I still see the same situation from what you guys are saying that the Patriots are going to face going into next year, based on everything you're saying and the guys are interested in and how they're going to attack today in the draft.
George,
so is it a retool year or rebuild year?
Yeah, George, I hear you, and I agree with a lot of stuff you're saying. I will say that, internally, the way the Patriots view it is they think they still have a pretty good team. And while you're right about receiver and tight ends and things like that they're limited, they also look at as N'Keal Harry made a lot of progress by the end of the season. In training camp before he got hurt, he had made a lot of progress. They're excited about him. Mohamed Sanu was hurt, basically since the Baltimore game on. Edelman was hurt all of last year. The tight ends were all hurt all of last year. And, and when they look at the quarterbacks in the division, I mean, maybe Tua changes the equation a little bit, but when you look at Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think the Patriots feel pretty good about coaching up Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer and whoever else to be competitive in the AFC. So I think they're okay where they are, and they view it as a retool. They don't think they're in rebuild status, but let's see a year from now when they have half the people are gone from the roster and they have $100 million in cap space, then we might be talking something different.
I think one of the big factors also, George, would be in a shortened, abbreviated off season. How does that impact the development of Jarrett Stidham? And do they throw as much at Jarrett Stidham as a QB1 taking over for Tom Brady as they normally would? And I don't think any of us know on the outside exactly how they feel about Stidham. I mean, we saw the 4 passes, the 1 pick 6 he threw. And that's obviously not a great sample size in terms of regular season snaps. So to me, that's really, I think, what a lot of this hinges on.
I think just looking at the board, the issue with finding playmakers right now is that a lot of the blue chip guys are already gone, obviously. And I think really when you look at it, Denzel Mims is really the only kind of guy that I think could come in here and truly potentially be an alpha down the road, a guy that's the top of your offense, a big time target for you. I think guys like Michael Pittman, Van Jefferson, KJ Hill, those are nice players for the Patriots, but they're complementary receivers. They're guys that are just kind of in the mix in the 5 pass catchers that you're going to throw out there, not necessarily a guy that really changes the equation for them. And certainly Cole Kmet and Adam Trotman and the tight ends out there are not going to be big time game changers either. So I really liked Greg's idea with Claypool, just thinking outside the box with a guy like that and just trying to go with the upside pick. I think that he can play a little bit tight end. There's tape of him just burying guys on blocks also, more on the perimeter than hand in the ground, obviously, but he is a big time blocker and a guy that really brings it in the running game also. So I think he has potential to play a little bit of tight end. Maybe he's a guy that they view with a little bit more upside than, let's say, a KJ Hill or a Van Jefferson, who have a little bit limited athletic profiles that might not be game changers for them. But I think Denzel Mims probably comes off the board tonight, maybe to Cincinnati, right at 33. So they might not even have a chance of picking him or taking a chance on him. But he's really the last guy on my board, at least, that I see as a big time game changer at the wide receiver position.
We've got a couple questions here because there have been some reports that Patriots may decide to trade down from that 37th pick. And if they do so, why and who's it for? Because we've talked about the tight end group, how it's not super strong this draft. Do they think they could get their tight end prospect at a lower pick? Is that why they'd be trading down? What do you think the rationale is behind this?
Yeah, I think that it's sort of the same thing we talked about last night when they traded down. It's, now you're in a spot where guys from 33 to, I mean, you can make the argument to like 80 to 100 that have similar grades. And so, especially if you're looking at, say, the tight end position, maybe they try to do a Gronkowski Hernandez type thing where they double dip, say, with 2 guys in the 3rd round. You get a Kemet and a Troutman, or a Devin, the kid from, how do you pronounce his name? Yeah, Asiasi.
UCLA.
UCLA. You get 2 guys like that, instead of just taking 1 in the top of the 2nd round. Plus, Sierra, I think where they are 37, it's so high in the round that you might have had teams overnight who restocked their boards and, they're like, you know what? We have a 1st round grade on this guy. If he's there at 37, we should go up and get him. Like we think he's a difference maker, where the Patriots are just like, all right, well, we think this guy's just as good, so we'll trade back, get more ammo. And one thing I think that they could do, something I brought up earlier in the offseason, I think you could see at some point, and it probably won't be till later on, where they start accumulating picks in next year's draft, kicking back to next year when they're going to have a lot more roster space, a lot more salary cap space. So I think that's part of the equation as we go through here too.
I really think that you're seeing this whole draft even out right now. Like Greg was saying, these guys from 33 to really, I would agree with Greg, to all the way to 100 are pretty much all the same guys. You know, they're all different skill sets and stuff like that. But in terms of their impact and their overall grade in their system, it's going to be exactly the same. I was talking about the wide receivers. You know, what's the real big difference between a guy like Michael Pittman and Van Jefferson to them? Probably not much. Or if you're looking at the defensive line, is AJ Epinenza and Marlon Davidson out of Auburn, are those two guys really that much different? I think that's the biggest reason why they traded down at 23, because you look at Kenneth Murray, who's a solid player, but is he much better than Zach Bond is, or one of these other linebackers that's still on the board? I'm not really sure that they really see them as big differences in the grading system there either. So I think that the biggest thing is that you can get multiple bites at this here on day two of guys that are basically all in the same pocket, all in the same tier, as Casario was saying last night, where there's just a giant pocket now on day two of guys that are basically all at the same skill level. And that's, I think, where they're at right now. And they might as well just accumulate as many of the picks as they can and just get as many of those guys as they can.
There's been a lot of talk about the depth of this draft. Schefter tweeting something out today about how there's a lot of first round prospects available tonight. So where do you guys see the drop off in the depth of this draft? And George, you obviously have firsthand experience of going through this draft and knowing that anticipation and questioning, where am I going to go? Because, you know, some people project a player in the third round that another team picks up in the fifth and so forth. Where is the drop off in the true depth of this draft? And is it tonight?
Well, I think it depends on what position you're talking about, right? I mean, I think at wide receiver, there's not much of a draft. I mean, you could get James Proche in the 5th round, and he's probably just as good as a guy that you're going to get in the 2nd or 3rd round at this point. I think that a wide receiver, offensive line is always one of those positions where the 4th or 5th round, there's going to be guys that some teams project as starters down the road. I think that those are the spots that you look at. The one spot that I will say that I think there are a couple of guys that are going to go off the board pretty early tonight that are better than some of the guys you're going to get later is linebacker. I mean, you start looking at Zach Bond and Malik Harrison from Ohio State, Logan Wilson from Wyoming. Those guys can really play. So I think that once you get past that little group right there, not only does it drop off a little bit, but it also drops off in terms of Patriots prototypes, because we know they're pretty picky in what kind of linebackers they're going to go after. So it starts to kind of get a little bit murky with guys that are more in that, 235, 230 range of jacked up safeties playing linebacker. And if they want one of those big time thumpers, then a guy like Harrison is going to go off the board here quickly tonight.
I would keep my eye on Joshua Jones. He is somebody that I think the Bengals have their eyes on because, with the Miami Dolphins, what you saw was that, you take your franchise quarterback in Tua, 5th overall, and then you add a offensive tackle to complement that about 15 picks later. Obviously, the theory there is you're not necessarily looking forward to 2020 as much as you are 2021 and 2022. I think with Burrow in Cincinnati, you could be looking at the same type of scenario. And I would expect that the Bengals, given their offensive line struggles in the last several years, they might go in that direction to build depth.
Outside of, I think, wide receiver, I'm usually pretty leery of dropping below the 3rd round. Because I think it gets a little sketchier there. And I think if the Patriots are looking for, some real players to come in and affect their 2-deep roster, I think I would rather see them, take like, a bottom of the 3rd round, one of their 3rd round picks, their 2 4th round picks, and trade into the 2nd and go with a couple 2nds, a couple 3rds, get like 4 guys that you feel good about that could affect the 2-deep on this team, and that's sort of what I would like to see them do tonight.
And before we sign off for our pre-draft show, George, the Gym Bag podcast, what can we expect from that?
It's pretty much, it's just if you listen to the Gym Bag podcast, it's really just a conversation between me and my friend. He's a football junkie, so I'm like the guy who played football, likes to really dive into it, and he's the guy that he's in your fantasy league. He's in every Facebook chat room, and he's like the admin to like 20 sports leagues on there. And so we go on there and we just talk the hottest sports topic, and it sounds more conversational. We're not really trying to talk at you. We want you to make you feel like you're sitting in and that you're talking with us. So it's a pretty interesting podcast. It's unfiltered, but it's not vulgar whatsoever. But it's really, really fun and a little different from what people are used to.
Hey George, before you go, can I ask you one thing? And you and I talked about this after your podcast, and I wrote it up. But you know, Andy Dalton's going to be out there after this draft. You know, what do you think about him as far as the Patriots, and whether he would? Do you think he would fit what they do and be an upgrade and be a good option for them?
Like I said, and I'm not saying this just because I played with him in the NFL. I played against him in college, and I played against him in high school. And to me, he's everything in terms of the Patriots way. He's that kind of guy. He's an X's and O kind of guy. He's a 1 + 1 is 2. If you tell him 3 + 3 is 6, he'll go out there and give you 3 + 3 is 6. Where he lacks is probably like creativity when things break down, but that's okay. That's not the Patriot way, right? When Patriots, the reason why they're so good, on top of having the right players in the right spot in terms of like you have like a Gronkowski, you have like a Tom Brady, and every now and then this big time receiver, some nice defensive players. They never beat themselves. They're disciplined, they're exact, and they always put together a good game plan. The teams that beat the Patriots, they beat them because they just have that much better athletes, so to say. Like they got out athlete, which is rare in the NFL because there's not a big disparity from team to team. So Andy would fit in because he's that kind of quarterback. 1, 2, 3 drop back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drop back, and he's going to go through his progression. He's going to hit it the exact way that you coached it and teach it up during the week. Now, if things break down, that's where you may struggle, but his arm is still there. If we're talking about Tom Brady from last year, I mean, I feel like he can make any throw that Tom Brady was able to make last year and over the last probably 2-3 years. Not a big cannon, but how many quarterbacks really in the NFL are just launching at 65, 70 yards down the field? So I think that'll be a great addition. I was surprised that they didn't make a run at him, but maybe they saw the price tag. Maybe they like the guys on your roster, like you said, but I still think that that's still on the table. And the Bengals haven't ruled it out. They said they're comfortable with him being the backup, but I just doubt that. I think that's smoke and mirrors to try to get a team to give up something for him. But when it's all said and done and we go through the draft and he's still sitting on the Bengals roster, I doubt that the Bengals want to sit with a quarterback with that big of a cap hit to be the backup. And I think teams that were like, we're okay on Andy before will then make a run at him because they probably won't have to give up much, if at all, for him.
Awesome. If you want more insight and conversation like that, subscribe to the Gym Bag podcast on CLNS Media, guys. Thank you guys for joining us for our pre-draft show. Enjoy rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. We'll be back live on our YouTube channel at CLNS Media right after the first pick of the second round. We'll react live to the Patriots pick or trade at number 37. So we'll see you there.